Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Adam, Old Man Winners. I'm Joe Gould, and we are watching not The Return of the Incredible Hulk, but we are watching The Incredible Hulk Returns from 1988.
So that's where Bryan Singer got the idea for Superman Returns.
I don't know. So interestingly, the Incredible Hulk TV series started off with two pilot made-for-TV movies, and the second one of those was originally called The Return of the Incredible Hulk. And I think that's why this one is not The Return, but is Return.
But officially, the two earlier movies, they're part of the series, right?
Well, they were produced before the show got greenlit. I got some clarity on that.
Oh.
So they were two made-for-TV movies. It became a series, and then when they went to syndication, they broke them up into two-part episodes.
Okay.
So yes.
Fairly standard, though, for a lot of shows.
And then about 6 years after the television series got canceled for disputed reasons, which rating is not one of them. It had good ratings.
Money.
The Hulk returns.
Even though I feel like this is less of a reunion movie for the show, more of an attempt to launch another franchise for television.
Yeah, so there's different angles on this. So before we get to that, I should say in the TV show, they had 0 characters from the comics outside of Banner and the Hulk. So they never had a guest star, or I'm sorry, a guest character or anything like that from the comics. Kenneth Johnson, who was the creator / executive producer of the show, who ironically was not invited to work on this movie by Bill Bixby.
There you go.
They wanted it grounded in reality. So they removed almost all of the supernatural, superhero-y elements other than the Hulk himself, which, for what it's worth, you can disagree with a lot of things that Kenneth Johnson may have wanted. For the purposes of the show, I think you got it right.
Yeah, I can't argue with it.
So they wanted to... This was kind of a backdoor pilot for a potential Thor show.
It would have been interesting.
It would have been. This was a ratings hit. I believe let me pull up that screen from the LA Times. All right, here's the article from 1988. Incredible. In the Battle of Sunday Night TV Movies, the winner was NBC's revival of a series based on a cartoon character. That's not accurate. Ugh. The Incredible Hulk Returns, which according to AC Nielsen ratings released Tuesday, was seen in about 17.9 million homes. So it won the ratings war with almost 18 million people watching it. Looks like a 20 share, so 20% of households watched it. It was number 4 total. A rerun of The Cosby Show had 22%.
Yeah.
But anyways, big rating success, and it didn't get you any more Thor, but it did get more Hulk movies greenlit. I will say reviews weren't great. Probably 50%-ish kind of thing. But I think it just reminded everyone that they didn't want this show canceled in the first place. So...
Ferrigno looks great. He didn't lose a step, I guess, in his fitness routine.
No, according to... I can't remember if I saw this on the DVD or if it was something else online, but he basically gained about 35 pounds of muscle in 3 months. A lot of people said he looked better in the movie than he had on the show.
The neck is impressive.
Well, so I don't know if you watched... I think we're watching the same DVD, but there was an interview with Ferrigno, and he said his schedule when he was doing the show was basically they would start filming at 5 a.m. and it took 3 hours of makeup.
Yeah.
And then he did the acting, and then it took like an hour to get cleaned up. And then he would go straight to the gym to maintain his physique, get home around 10, 11 o'clock, and start again at 5 a.m. the next day.
That's a rough schedule.
It is. But yeah, so we do get Jack Colvin returning as Jack McGee, the reporter from the TV show. And
not in the comics? Really? No McGee?
Nope, not the comics. He is original. Him and Bixby and Ferrigno are the only recurring characters in the television show.
I was wondering, when Banner was doing his theoretical last will and testament, he was recording it, he mentioned 2 other doctors in addition to Maggie, who's in this movie. And I was wondering if those were characters introduced in the show.
That's a good question, and I don't think so.
Oh.
So in the very first episode, he performs, or the first movie, I should say, he performs the experiment on himself and becomes the Hulk. And from that point on, he is the Lonely Man. I think I misidentified the song as the Walking Man at some point in the previous episode, but it's the Lonely Man. And the whole premise of the show is he's looking for a cure, but inevitably trouble finds him. His happiness is short-lived because the Hulk makes an appearance and he has to move to a different city. So he never really his time with academia is done by the end of the first episode.
What was the crime that he was wrongly accused of?
Murder.
Well, but of who?
His girlfriend. No, actually not his girlfriend. So the premise of the movie, the original movie, which I do recommend you watching if you like this at all. It's better than this, but is his girlfriend / wife, not really identified. Him and her are in a car wreck. And he's unable to rescue her from the car by lifting it to get the door open before it catches on fire and basically explodes. So he's doing research on people, not research, but he's researching people who, in that moment of crisis, were able to show a great thing of strength.
Okay.
And they were able to lift a car or break down a door. And ultimately he thinks it's tied to a sunspots with gamma being or extra gamma in the atmosphere, so to speak, tied to or along with a genetic mutation in certain people, which they all have, including him. And he finds that on the night of his wreck, there was actually low gamma, so he wouldn't have been able. That may have explained why he couldn't lift the car. So then he does the experiment on himself, and he unknowingly gives himself a higher dose than he thought he did, and he becomes the Hulk. Now he's got a friend that he works with, like a lifelong friend, the female, who they secretly love each other. But they're also working on his research. And at the end of the movie, she ends up dying, but the Hulk is blamed for the death, and he's assumed dead himself.
His name is Bruce, legally, according to that tombstone.
David Bruce Banner.
So it's in there. They didn't want alliteration. They didn't want the BB going on for that.
Didn't want the alliteration, and then Ferrigno also said that the name sounded too feminine.
Well, okay. That's a weird hang-up. I'm sure the 70s were just different. You had to be there.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think David works. I mean, you get used to it. He's still Banner. I think Stanley did go too far with the alliteration anyway, so I'm not too upset with that.
In this movie, he's like Barnyard?
Banyan. Banyan.
Good job.
Yes. David Banyan.
Peter
Cushing would be proud.
Well, let me, there is a Frankenstein connection with the creation of the Hulk, but let me ask a question. Is this the longest that Banner went in one place with one job since his mutation in this series? It says he's there 2 years at, I forget the name, not Johns Hopkins, some made-up place.
Yeah, I forget the name too. Joshua Lambert Research Institute.
Okay.
So, yeah. To answer your question, 2 years would be definitely the longest. The show never had a big gap in time. So, the 6 years between the show and the movie created the opportunity for them to do that.
But for everything else, he was in one place for one episode, unless it was a double episode.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't know that they named all the towns. I want to go back and watch every episode of the series. I guess it's one of those things I've always wanted to do it. I think my kids are old enough I'd have someone to watch it with now.
There you go.
No, it's a good show. I recommend it to anybody. It's Bill Bixby is by far the best Bruce Banner, and you could definitely make an argument that Lou Ferrigno has yet to be upstaged. I know people love Mark Ruffalo, and I do like the Hulk himself, but Bixby is a better Banner, and
I agree.
I'm kind of tired of Smart Hulk now. Kind of want a different one.
I think Ruffalo plays Ruffalo. Is that fair to say?
When they transitioned from Norton to Ruffalo, I just don't feel like they made an attempt to really establish who the character of Bruce Banner was.
Yeah. That's why they kind of got him stuck as Hulk for most of his runs. He's just the Hulk.
Yeah. I think if Ed Norton was easy to get along with, a nice guy, then by now you could be making an argument that he could have given Bixby a run for his money.
He had the intensity, the quiet intensity that you need for that role. The don't make me angry.
Yeah, and the tortured soul kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's Bixby's great. He's
died not too long after this, right?
He got cancer right after the third movie.
Oh, okay.
They were going to bring him back. They were going to bring it. Well, they wanted to bring it back for a fourth movie. The ratings for the third one wasn't great, probably because no one wanted to see the Hulk die. And then, so it's up in the air whether or not the fourth movie. I think it was been the Revenge of the Incredible Hulk or the Resurrection of the Incredible Hulk.
I didn't know Bixby was basically the producer of this in addition to the star actor. I did not know he was that involved.
Yeah, so he got his production company along with NBC. The show itself had aired on CBS, but NBC picked up the series for the movies. And basically he ran the thing. He thought it would be intriguing to see, to pick up the Bruce Banner character or the David Banner character, years later to see where he was in life, so to speak. I'm not sure if it was his idea to introduce the other comic characters or not, but not having Kenneth Johnson on there freed him up to be able to do it. The New World, whatever they were called, New World
Pictures.
Television.
Yeah, okay. Entertainment.
Yeah, so they owned Marvel at the time. So they had access to all the characters. So
I am curious why you go about 80 episodes of a TV show trying so hard not to bring any people from the comics in, and then the first guy you pick is Mighty Thor and Donald Blake. That's a curious decision to me.
Well, again, Kenneth Johnson was not invited to take part of the series. So I guess they thought there's some similarities between Hulk and Thor in terms of like taking him to the small screen for an audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think they thought they could figure out the effects that they needed. Honestly, Thor is one of the highlights of this movie. I couldn't stand Donald Blake, but
he reminds me of Michael Anthony Hall. Big in the 80s, teen movies, a lot of them. He was in Weird Science. He was in Breakfast Club. A lot of John Hughes stuff.
Anyways, he's got a face, man. You just want to punch it.
Fair enough.
Well, the whole movie, David's like, "You're an idiot. Why don't you see this?" He's like, "What do you mean I'm an idiot? I'm just like you." He's like, "No, you're not. You cause all your own problems."
So, maybe you can help me on this. Is this a novel take on Thor Donald Blake dynamic, never before seen until this had been done?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not a Thor expert by any stretch, but in the comic, they share a body. There's apparently some weird cane involved. But in this one, you got two distinct people.
Perfect for a sitcom.
It'd been good for a TV show. You have two people play off each other. Like, well, Bixby and Ferrigno, only they could be face to face. And then in this movie, Thor is not a Norse god either.
He's more like Hercules, right? As in he was mortal, and in order to go to Valhalla, he has to accomplish heroic deeds. Whereas, and again, I'm not a Thor reader either, but he's a Norse god, but he's punished by Odin to inhabit the body of basically a comatose medical patient or something like that. And then he can change back and forth, but here he's a genie, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, you just gotta rub the hammer the right way.
And he wants his freedom, but it's unclear how he will accomplish it or achieve that. How much does he have to do to go to Valhalla? Also, is the original Thor dead? Because we see the skeleton. So what is it? What is it that Donald Blake summons out of the hammer?
Yeah, I think he's just a dead Viking who has been cursed by Odin, and the hammer is the equivalent of the light switch that you turn on and the light arrives, so to speak.
I also noticed just about anybody can lift the hammer that tries it in this movie. At least two people. I mean, I didn't know what to think of all that, even with my limited Thor knowledge.
Yeah, and this is the first live-action Thor.
Looks like it.
I think the only cartoon had been one of those like motion comic kind of things they did with some of the characters in the 60s. And then you do have this interesting dynamic that Donald Blake says all Thor does is talk all day long. And Thor's like, I might be talking, but you ain't listening to what I gotta say.
Mm-hmm. That man wants four things in life.
Yes.
He wants to drink first. That's what he gets out of the lamp. He wants to drink. And then he wants lots of food or something, because I guess he's flesh and blood, even though that's kind of debatable. And he wants to laugh with a woman, and he wants to fight with a man.
Or a troll.
Well, okay, fair. Something masculine. He wants to fight in masculine style. And I guess you can find all of those in a Los Angeles dive bar.
Oh my goodness, that was the worst bar scene I've seen in a long time. Terminator is not.
It was something. It had nothing to do with the Hulk narrative in this movie, which really threw me.
No, it's their bonding time. But you also didn't get like a big brawl. You got like a kind of a fight, more of a push.
Yeah, a shoving.
Thor might throw the hammer pretty hard, but he slaps like a woman.
Yeah.
It was like the weakest little backhand. Like, you couldn't do another take.
I wasn't quite sure how to read Thor in his initial appearance, when he basically has a conversation with Banner, who's not trying to antagonize him, and Thor ends up throwing him into an electric fence or something.
Thor's very aggressive.
What? I guess part of that is his relationship with Blake, having to live with that guy.
I didn't pick up on this back in the day when I watched it, but I did notice it. And it's kind of interesting to watch a movie when you're 10 and then to watch it when you're 40. Like, you do pick up on different things. And my understanding is that Thor was kind of like, is this guy like a witch doctor? Like, I don't think he trusted the science, and he was concerned that Blake took him there to get rid of him, basically.
And he did, right?
He did. No, absolutely. So I think like they could have made that a little bit more on the nose, a little more clear, because Thor, he's not a bad guy in this movie at all. He's actually a really nice guy with honor. He won't do anything wrong, but he picks a fight with this 50-year-old man and throws him in an electric fence. Not that he knows what electricity is, probably, but very aggressive.
He's only the god of thunder. He's not the god of lightning, except in this one, maybe not either.
Yeah. So what'd you think of the Thor effects?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Are you just talking about the little electricity bolts they superimpose over?
Yeah, just in general. I'll expand that. Effects and costume.
Costume not great, but hey, we've seen the Captain America suit from '79. Both of them.
There are some similarities in the helmet. Do you think they repurposed the ears?
Oh, that's a fair question.
I noticed when I was watching this time that there's hammers all over his costume, and the T on his belt is actually the hammer. I didn't notice that before.
He has a dagger, doesn't he? Do you think the dagger is magic?
I don't know. But I was about to make fun of the movie because I said he's got a T on his belt. Vikings don't speak English, and there was no English in the cave. And then I realized that they got around that by making it the hammer icon. It's like, that's kind of clever.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's more of a Thor movie or a Hulk movie because of just the way the backstory is played out?
I'd still call it a Hulk movie, but it's definitely kind of a 50-50 split. It feels like one of those Marvel team-up comics.
Okay.
I think a lot of the reason why the reviews were a little harsh on it back in the day is that we did want the Hulk back. And we got the Hulk back, but he had to share screen time.
So I have two complaints as relates to this movie as a Hulk movie. And one of those is going to be that it does not feel like the threat of this movie is appropriate for two major heroes on screen at one time. It just feels very low-level stakes here.
And I agree with that. That's my biggest problem with the movie is that you're going to introduce another Hulk-like character on the good guys team. And then you got like a bunch of Cajun mobsters look like they really could have been in the Ninja Turtles TV show.
Now, I will defend Charles Napier. I think Charles Napier is a legitimate villain in most contexts, but not so much here when he's got to fight the Hulk and Thor. Murdoch from the second Rambo, right? And I didn't know this. Charles Napier apparently appeared in the old show and did voiceover work on the Hulk.
Yep.
Well,
he did.
How about that?
Yeah. No, I agree with it. Even with the fact that Hulk and Thor are definitely depowered compared to the comics. Like, they're not bulletproof or anything.
I was wondering about that, too.
he's got a healing factor. So in the original movie pilot, he got shot as the Hulk. He still had the wound as Banner, but it healed by mid-afternoon.
There are several deflections of bullets or shields in this movie, and the thing that affects the Hulk the most is a tranquilizer dart.
Yeah, it took 2 of them, but he got woozy for a few minutes.
Yeah. And the most ridiculous scene, in most stunt works, this would be fine. Hulk and Thor grabbing onto each side of a helicopter, trying to A, prevent it from taking off, and B, to hold on, and they fall off. Like Thor gets his fingers stepped on, and Hulk just slips, because he could blame it on the trank dart.
Still outlasted Thor.
Yeah, not the best look for either one of those guys in that particular moment.
Could have come across better if they had actually shook the helicopter, like the helicopter trying to shake them off. This movie is not as good as the show. It's not as good as the next movie either, if I remember correctly. And the stakes are a little more balanced in the next movie also. They're using Banner's girl here to create like an artificial threat. Like they're not really all that worried about getting killed. They're just worried about her getting killed in the process.
And yet, as an audience, we don't have great attachment to her as a character either.
No, your attachment to her is through you're a long-term fan of the show and you want Banner to have his happy life and not to lose another person.
Then you wouldn't have the show anymore.
He loses quite a few women throughout the course of the series.
Yeah. Now, the machine, the gamma transponder, is that what we call it?
Yes.
That's supposed to be his ticket to a cure that he's worked on for 2 years, and yet, in an odd thing, he gets permission to go in the lab after hours, and he's going to do the first major test of this unit on himself privately, and then Blake shows up. And then he never gets the chance to do it again, because I guess the Cajun bad guys, they've got an inside man, John Hughes' son, Lattimore?
I think it's Zach. Is it Zach Lambert, I believe?
Lambert, yeah. Zachary Lambert is going to deal with these Cajun bad guys. Why? Why? Oh, I don't know.
Well, there's a rambling scene at his hospital bed where he's getting back at his father, I guess. It really wasn't real clear.
And then the father wants to get back at the mobsters by driving his old gas guzzler into the junkyard and ruining Banner's plan.
No, it's like I said, Donald Blake is a heel in this movie for most of the movie and doesn't even realize it. So, I mean, David Banner somehow gets employed as David Banyan for this research institute, leads a group of scientists, gets paid without a social security number.
It's because of who he sleeps with.
Yeah. Well, makes this machine, doesn't want any credit for it. And then as he's about to use it, because his girl wants to come home quick.
Yeah.
As she put it, she's softer in all the right places compared to that transponder.
You wouldn't think she would have wanted to be there for the test, too.
Well, she didn't know he was Hulk.
Oh, okay. Well, should have mentioned that at some point.
Well, they did.
I meant, if he's in a relationship with this lady for 2 years, it probably should have come. Okay, he did tell her he was a monster.
He said that he's got a problem. She wants him to move in, but he says he can't do it until he can be sure that his hide doesn't come back unexpectedly.
Oh, that's right. Then he makes the comment about taking up your sinful offer. So he hasn't moved in with her yet. Okay.
Correct. He just is there most of the time.
Fair enough.
Anyways, so then Blake shows up because he recognized Banner from 10 years ago and he's got this hammer thingy and he's his favorite professor and turns the machine off.
Guest lecturer, not a professor.
Yeah. You're right. So then you got this timer and this dramatic moment, and all the fans of the show were like, "Oh, he's finally gonna cure himself." Not really, but they're in the moment. And he takes the CD-ROM out.
Man, so I love the fact this is 1988, right?
Yes.
During the 1990s, all the cartoon shows and movies, you could destroy or save the world using a 3.5-inch floppy disk. This one is advanced. 1988, he's already using a CD-ROM.
Oh, yeah.
Impressive.
No, this is high-tech science here, man. This ain't John Hopkins. This is Joshua Lambert research.
That's true.
So then Banner gets mad at Blake. Like, you idiot. You were an idiot back then. You're an idiot now.
Yep.
Tells him he's crazy after he tells him a story. Then he pulls out the hammer and shows him Thor. And
goes
Thor
into
gets...
electric fence.
Yep. And then, pretty much makes quick work with Thor. I will say that. Thor is never presented as an equal to the Hulk in this movie.
No, but he enjoys getting to fight him, though.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if the Hulk was actually a bad guy in the show or was willing to kill someone on purpose, I don't think Thor would have made it out of that first scene.
Yeah, his powers are unclear, definitely. His immortality and all that.
He's got super strength. Yeah.
Is he able to... Does he have super senses? Is he able to smell Banner out when he's tracking him down after the first fight?
So he did say he does. And he seemed to have at least improved hearing, if not super hearing, towards the end when he heard someone coming while they were getting ready for their last little scheme. But I don't know. He's a Viking. They have tracking abilities.
I could see him being very popular with the ladies if that went to show. Walking around in the towel and everything, being sort of the caveman who just opens the beer can upside down.
Eric Kramer, who played Thor, you could tell he was having a ball.
Oh yeah,
it makes you wonder if he was an old fan of the other show.
Kramer, I like that. Is he?
I'm assuming he had a wig.
I'm
assuming he's wearing a wig, and it's not a very good wig.
It doesn't look. I mean, Chris Hemsworth or whatever, he wore a wig in the first movie, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. And colored his eyebrows too.
Oh yeah.
So what do you think of Ferrigno?
Well, I said he's fantastic. He has a great intensity. It doesn't look like he lost a step. It seems like really he owes a lot of who he became to the Marvel comics and just inspired him as a kid. You know those little advertisements in the comics about you can go from wimp to beach hunk? I think Lou Ferrigno is that guy.
Yeah. No, he was bullied as a kid because he's like 85% deaf, or was. I think he got his hearing fixed not too many years ago. Some experimental thing. But anyways, he decided unless he wanted to be bullied his whole life, he needed to get big. The muscles that inspired him, and he definitely pulled it off. Mr. Olympia.
Oh, yeah.
Beat out Arnold Schwarzenegger for this role.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was too short.
Well, he beat out the James Bond villain too.
Yes.
Who was also in the Happy Gilmore movie, I think.
But no, his facial expressions are great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even despite he's got all these prosthetics on, but just the eyes and the facials, very very good. Underrated in general. People love him for this role, but he's underrated in a lot of ways.
Now, I have my second major critique of this movie as a Hulk movie, and that comes down to the scene late in the movie where Maggie is kidnapped, and the Cajun boys are demanding that Banner hand over the transponder. Banner's solution is to go with Blake and Thor to the lab and destroy it first, and then go save the girl. So this is where it seems to me you could have had a real character moment for Bruce Banner. David Banner. The question he has to face is does he need to get rid of the Hulk or not? Does he need to cure himself of it? And you can have this parallel with Blake and Thor working out a relationship with each other, Banner and the Hulk. Because if Blake didn't come in, he might have purged himself of the Hulk. But if he'd done that, then he wouldn't be able to solve this crisis with Maggie getting kidnapped. And even though he makes the decision to destroy the machine, I thought if they'd have just put a scene in there about what is Banner's need for the Hulk? Does the world need the Hulk after all? Is a curse really a blessing? That just seemed the perfect opportunity they didn't take.
Well, it wouldn't have worked for the show, I don't think. One of the themes of the show is that the Hulk is a curse for David Banner. In the show, he does not have control over the Hulk at all. It's established that the Hulk won't kill because he is a part of David. But he has no memory of anything that happens while the Hulk's loose. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But at that point, you don't have a show anymore.
Well, you don't need to if you're in the TV movie portion of the lifespan. If you want to bring the show back, you got to have that tension. But if you're just going to make movies, it's fine to change the status quo in that way.
Yeah, I don't know. So I will also say too, the comics had not yet explored that idea.
Yeah, the whole Smart Hulk business and all that. And you don't have to have Smart Hulk.
Or just anything beyond the Savage Hulk. So
Yeah.
they hadn't moved past that yet. So there's not any source material to really pull from. So I hear you, but I think we might be looking at that from 2020 lens as opposed to 1988.
Well, I feel like the work is already done with Blake and Thor. And you could have made a parallel between Banner and Hulk. So even though, he saves the day, he saves the girl, he realizes he can't stay with her now that all this has happened. He's destroyed the machine, the reporter knows where he lives, and even though Maggie doesn't know all the details, she knows the monster is now not just a metaphor for David. Yeah. And so that's his curse. He can't stay in one place. He's going to keep being the wandering, lonely man. But arguably he can make the world a little bit better place wherever he goes.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I think what David would say, if he was a real person, would be that, yes, the Hulk saves a lot of days, but the Hulk has also been the reason why a lot of those days needed to be saved.
That's true, too.
And I think he's just tired. That's the other theme of the show.
Yeah.
So he wants to settle down and have some semblance of a normal life.
I mean, Maggie could have traveled with him, even if they didn't stay in the same place. Seems a little bit of a begging the question there. She probably would have been willing to do it. I'm assuming she's out of a job, maybe? I don't know.
I don't know. Good question.
Yeah.
But if there's any doubt that the Hulk's a hero, the dog likes him.
Oh, yeah. And Thor, too, I think.
He just likes running around with Thor.
That's true.
What'd you think of the dialogue in the movie?
It's fun. I don't, like I say, you got Charles Napier doing his stuff. I'm glad they didn't give everybody a heavy Cajun accent. At one point, the bad guys argue about which one is more Cajun, maybe. Or I'm just as Cajun as you are. A little odd.
Yeah. Most of the good lines came from Thor. And
about when McGee comes to the door of the apartment.
Well, that was good too. But when he had that first fight with Hulk, he says, right before he throws his hammer at him, says, "This will send you back to hell, you ugly troll." And then the response after he gets hit is, "I think I made him angry."
Yeah, that he did.
And then the villain had a good line. "You can't win the game unless you'd rather die than lose it." That was a good one.
He took racquetball really seriously in that.
Oh, yeah.
That was a little awkward.
So here, Thor to Blake. "You may not be much of a man, but you got a big brain and a wide heart."
Aww.
It was funnier on the scene because he's like, "What?"
Yeah. It would have made a fun sitcom between those two. Bit of an odd couple with a superhero. I do kind of like the scene where he's drinking all the pitchers of beer in the bar, and I guess Blake is paying for him because he looks really despondent next to all the empty pitchers.
Well, I think he had one, and he said he was gone. All 110 pounds of him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Several references to Odin in the movie.
Though they never really clarified what he was.
No.
So it is interesting that this show, or this movie, and then the next one, both were backdoor pilots. And they were successful, but they didn't get no pilots out of it. So it makes you wonder, were they really intended to be backdoor pilots, or just they were using it as an excuse to get the movies made?
Well, I'm wondering if part of that had anything to do with the network switch. If maybe there was enough work done when it was CBS that they might have done pilots, but when NBC, they were just happy to do the movie of the week.
Well, CBS had nothing to do with these. These were just with NBC at the time.
Right. I just didn't know if some of the earlier scripts had been done while CBS was still in the picture.
I don't think so. I think this was a Bill Bixby project of love, so to speak.
All right.
I think he drove this.
Do you think he would have produced the other series then? Bixby's production house?
I don't know. It's a great question. And I don't know who would have funded it.
But that's another thing, funding problem. Just you don't have it clear who's going to make it, even if there's a market for it.
Yeah. Because you would think if they thought it could be successful, they'd been better off making the Thor show instead of more Hulk movies, because the Hulk is expensive.
Yeah.
And I would imagine the Thor show would have been cheaper.
You don't have to do near as much makeup, 4 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can get by with more comedy and a little bit of action.
You can almost make a sitcom out of that show.
Oh, yeah.
Like a 30-minute sitcom.
Yep.
I think this movie is clearly better than the Captain America movies.
Well, I like Death Too Soon. In fact, I will rank this below Death Too Soon.
Oh goodness, Bill Bixby's
I
in this
will.
movie.
I gave that one 4. I came very close to giving it 4 out of 5 whatevers, and I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5. I'm only giving this one 3 out of 5, even though I do like it. It's only getting 3 out of 5 somethings, and I'm not sure what.
So 3 out of 5 transponders, huh?
Maybe.
I'm fine with 3 out of 5 whatevers. But I don't think I gave Captain America 2 3.5. So I have to go back
I
and
thought
check
you gave it 3, and I gave it 3.5.
That's probably about right. And it was a much better movie than the first one.
If Captain America had been able to perfect the shield throwing, or at least just simplify it into something not stupid, I would have given it 4, most likely. But
yeah, the effects were so bad in that movie. And the costume, everything looks so bad in that movie. I just can't say it's a better movie than this.
Fair enough.
And they wasted Christopher Lee because he just sat in his office all day long.
Fair enough.
I'll give this one 3.25 just to make it above the other one. While recognizing that this is not the best Hulk show or movie, however you want to put it, out of the Bixby Ferrigno era.
Oh, sure.
And I do agree. The main problem with this movie, in my opinion, is that the stakes are too low in terms of the villains.
Oh, yeah. Like a kidnapping and ransom plot that they have to try it twice to succeed. They try in a van, then they try in a helicopter.
So if they had succeeded in getting the transponder but not Banner, and then for the final thing they had to go save the girl and destroy the machine, I think the movie feels different in that regard. But the villains don't succeed in anything in this movie other than tranquilizing the Hulk and getting the girl from the beach house.
Right. Only because Thor and Hulk couldn't hang on to a helicopter long enough.
Yeah, and they still could have done that scene because if they had gotten the transponder but not Banner, they still wouldn't have been able to operate it. So they still could have done the same thing.
Yeah, they could have gotten Maggie to try and work the machine for them.
So anyways, I think they could have finessed the script in that way, and this would have been more of a straight up 3.5 out of 5 kind of movie.
Yeah. Room for improvement.
Yeah. So next we get The Trial of the Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And at least up until the Netflix show, this movie presented the definitive Daredevil.
That's not saying much.
So we'll see how it goes. The Kingpin's in this movie is Wilson Fisk. I have fond memories of the movie. I hope that I'm not disappointed. But you got any closing thoughts on The Incredible Hulk Returns?
I'd definitely watch this over Superman Returns any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not saying much.
No. And also, I don't have to think about Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer, so that's good.
Yeah, it's hard to watch some stuff anymore.
Oof.
Everybody just lets you down.
That they have.
All right. Well, with that, this has been The Incredible Hulk Returns.
Excelsior!